Welcome back to Gita Odyssey live sessions. Today today is the 11th session and we are reviewing Shloka 13. We couldn't complete that last week because we had to take a pause and understand a few fundamental vision of the Vedanta so that the Gita will be more clear to us. So we will continue and complete that Shloka today. So let's continue. So at the beginning of the class, we will try to see where exactly we stand in chapter 2. So we are reviewing the second topic. We already covered the first topic, which is the expression of the fundamental problem through the case history of Arjuna. And we were reviewing Shloka 13, which can be said as one of the most important or most foundational teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, because the ultimate purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to reveal who am I, what am I. So that is the topic we are dealing with. And we covered 3 shlokas in that section. In fact, we were reviewing the third shloka. So let's listen to that chanting and we will we'll continue with the shloka. So let's listen to the chanting. Maybe from the beginning of Bhagavan's teaching.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Ashocyananvashocastvam Prajnavadamscha bhashase Gatasunagatasumscha Nanushocanti panditaha Natmevaham jatu nasam Natvam neme janadhipaha Na chaiva na bhavishyamaha Sarve vayamatah param Dehinosmin yatha dehe Kaumaram yauvanam jara Tatha dehantara praptihi Dhirastatra na muhyati.
These were the 3 shlokas we have seen. And we were reviewing this particular shloka, Shloka 13, which talks about the continuity of human existence. So just to connect the dots, Krishna said, you are weeping and you are acting like a man of realization, a man of knowledge. And then he said, the only way to get out of the suffering is knowing who you are, what you are. In other words, self-realization is the only solution which can free one person from his suffering. Because everybody is subjected to suffering. That is the fundamental problem. Remember, we talked about this. Because of what I'm getting suffering, or what is giving me a problem is a variable. From time to time, it varies. But that I am subjected to suffering is the fundamental problem. So instead of treating the outer symptoms, Krishna is treating the fundamental problem. What is the problem he is treating with this particular portion of the Bhagavad Gita? The most fundamental human problem is that I am subjected to suffering. So he said, the only way to get out of that suffering is knowing yourself. And then he made a statement. Pandita means the one who knows the Atma or the self. He doesn't perpetually worry. Because remember, he doesn't say that he won't worry, he won't be sad. Krishna didn't say that. The word used is very carefully, we need to review. Anushocanti. Anushocanti means perpetually worrying, like constantly worrying. Remember that 2 arrows we said? Here we are talking about that second arrow, the suffering. The pain is inevitable, but the suffering is optional. That was the discussion we had. So Panditas won't have that suffering. Yes, they may have pain, they may suffer, they may have that trouble, but they won't suffer because of that. That perpetual suffering won't be there. And they don't suffer, they don't worry, perpetually worry about anything in the world, neither dead nor the living. And that statement could potentially be confusing, because then people may interpret it as like, oh, he doesn't care about the human life. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, you don't care. That is not the attitude. So the attitude is different. What Krishna said is, why the Panditas won't perpetually worry or over worry, continuously worry over the death, is they know the fact. What is that fact? Natve vaham jatu nasham natvam neme janatibaha nachaiva nabhavishyamaha sarve vayamata param. Beautifully he said, using double negative, he said, there won't be a time you won't be there. And there was not a time you were not there. Neither you, nor me, nor these people. Because in your true essence, not the way you identify yourself, but in your true essence, you are indestructible. You are not conditioned by time. You don't have a birth, you don't have a death. Then naturally there will be a question. Then what am I seeing? That's not my direct experience. Everyone in this call have a birthday. Each one of us are growing, and there will be a time each one of us will be departing from this world. So what does that mean? These two teachings is not reconciling or correlating. So to explain that point, look at how systematically it is explained. You can understand. Each shloka is very carefully placed. He said, what you are identifying yourself as you is not the full dimension of you. So you identify yourself as Rajesh or Avanti or Rohitji or Radha ji. That is just not the complete dimension of yourself. That is only one dimension which get manifested at a particular period of time, exist for a period of time, and then departs. That is not the true you. The true you is beyond that. Just like the dream body and the mind has an existence in the dream, like that. But your true identity is not coming to an end when the dream ends. That is the whole point. So like that, whom you perceive as you is only a small dimension of you. To make it clear, we pause there and we try to understand the multiple dimension of the human personality. So we said every human being has multiple, at least 3 major dimensions. There is a 4th dimension called Karna Sharira, which we will explain. So every human being has 3 different layers of shariras or the bodies. The first one is known as physical body. We talked about this extensively in the previous session. Physical body is that which can be perceived, seen, or touched. That is the physical body. That which is born, that which is growing, that which decaying, and finally that which perishes is physical body. So this includes your brain. Remember, the brain also is physical body. The neurons are physical body. Your heart is physical body. So anything within the scope of the medical science is physical body. So this physical body it is not immortal, it is mortal, it is subjected to change. So that is what? Dehinosmin yatha dehe. The body is subjected to change. Kaumaram yavvanam jara and dehandara prapti. So there is a birth, growth, decay, death for this physical body. If you borrow the Vedantic terminology, the physical body is said to have Shat Bhava Vikara. It is subjected to 6-fold modification. If you borrow pure Advaita Vedanta terminology, They are asti, jayate, varthate, viparinamate, apakshiyate, and pranashyati. These are the six-fold modification a body goes through. And this is subjected to sthula sharira or the physical body. So asti means the existence in the womb. Jayate means the actual birth into the world. Birth. Varthate means grow. You grow up to a stage, and then what happened? Some big changes happening. That is arthate, meaning meaning asti, jayate, varthate, viparinamate. Suddenly, when you get into that youth stage, there is a big change, and thereafterwards there is no growth, and that is called viparinamate. Then apakshiyate, you see that things are going down. Earlier, meaning we joked, earlier I could read without glasses, and now you need glasses. You need hearing aids. All those things started. That is a sign of viparinama, meaning, apakshiyati. And finally, pranashyati. This body will come to an end. See, even the prophets are no more. Where is Krishna? Where is Christ? As long as there is a body, that body is subjected to these changes, including that of avatara purushas. Meaning, there is a nuance in there. We will talk about that a little bit later. But including the avatara purushas body will come and go. Right? So this is physical body. Then we talked about the physical body is kind of by itself, it won't be functional. To make the physical body functional, there is another component called subtle body. I took a loose example, like a hardware and a software of a computer. Shankaracharya's time, this example was not there. Otherwise, I'm 100% sure he would have used it. This is the perfect example of the physical body and the subtle body. So if you open up a computer, if a particular program is running on that computer, that is what is giving the personality of that computer. But that program, without that program, the computer is useless. Even if you have the power, even if you have the best hardware in the world, without that software, the computer cannot interact with you. Without a driver, the mouse will not function. The webcam will not function. Your keyboard will not function. You will not see the display in the monitor. So it's completely useless. So it is the software. So depending what type of software is installed in the computer is what is giving the personality. If you open up a PowerPoint, it is the PowerPoint personality you see. So the software, the type of software running in your hardware determines the look and feel and the personality and the skills of the computer. So just like that, the physical body is loaded with a subtle software kind of thing. It is known as subtle body. Sukshma Sharira. What exactly is Sukshma Sharira? If I borrow the exact Vedantic terminologies, it's a combination of 19 components. 19 components. What are they? The soft power of all the 10 sense organs, 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action. Mind you, it is not the actual organ. So if you take the eye, physical eye, eyeball, and the retina and everything, that's part of the physical body. But just having the eye will not make the eye function. You need to have a subtle component, the power of vision. So that's kind of a software programming, and that is the subtle body. Like that, every sense organs will have to have, just like a hardware needs to have, like a webcam is a hardware, but the driver that connects the webcam with the computer is a software. Like that, just you will have the brain, you will have the heart, you will have everything. But to make it run, to make it function the way you want, there is the subtle body. So 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action. The power, the soft power behind that is 10. Now 9 more. 9 more. The next 5 is the Pancha Prana, the function that drives the Pancha Prana. Prana, Vyana, Apana, Upana, and Samana. Pancha pranas are the 5 energetic function in your body that runs your like your circulatory system, your excretion, the soft power behind that. That is Pancha prana. So 5 organs of perception, the soft power behind the organs of perception, the soft power behind the power, the power of the organs of action, and the Pancha prana. So 15, 4. Mind, the mind is again a soft power. Brain and the neuron is there, but mind is completely different. So that power of mind, that is a soft power, and that is part of the subtle body. Then the intelligence. Of course, the neurons and the wiring create the intellect, but the intelligence is a soft power. Any doubt? Look at artificial intelligence. All these discoveries are coming. We are talking about left and right. What is artificial intelligence? It is what happens from the data you stored, you derive a pattern. And that is intelligence. The way you define that data, it is a soft power. It is not hardware at all. It is not an algorithm. It is not a program even. It is something else, and that is intelligence. So if you really read machine learning or deep learning, especially the deep learning, you will understand exactly why the intelligence is a soft power. And that's exactly what it is here. So manaha, buddhihi, chittaha. Chittaha means what? Here it is not the chit, consciousness. It is different. Chittam here means the storage. Like what exactly? It's not the physical storage. It's not like it is the actual data. It is the impressions and all those things. That is chittam. So manaha, buddhihi, chittam, and ahankaraha. Ahankaraha is again a sense of I-ness, because when these apparatus all work together, remember, there is a physical hardware, there is a software, and there is some energizing power. All these things put together, you need to have a sense of I-ness to operate this, and that is what is ahankara. So this is again a soft power. So all these put together is known as subtle body. Now, one more point. We are deep diving into a lot of Vedantic ideas. So any questions, I think we will complete it and we will open up for any questions. Now, what happens what is the longevity of the physical body and the subtle body? We know that the longevity of the physical body might be 0 to 100 years. What happens when the physical body dies? The Vedanta tells that something survives. And what exactly survives is the subtle body. So again, subtle body is a body. Body means it's a like Shiryate iti sharira. Like subtle body will not die when the physical body dies. And I talked about this last week. Different religions has different models. Christianity and all the Abrahamic religions talk about the fact that something survives the death. And what survives, that surviving entity is called by Bible and Quran, and even in the Judaism scriptures, it is called as soul. That is what the soul. And this is the danger of using soul for Atma, because their definition of, because the word soul also came from the biblical language, and if you use that word soul to represent Atma, that is not a correct representation. The closest match of that word soul is subtle body, Sukshma Sharira. So, according to the biblical tradition, that surviving entity will be put into an animate, suspended state, and it will be resurrected with a body at the time of Judgment Day. So this is a particular model. So last week again I tried to clarify, those who rejects reincarnation, they also agree And even the foundation of their scripture is that something survives death. The only difference is whether it takes a new body or whether it stays suspended. That's it. And they also say that it takes a body later point of time, at the time of judgment. So there is absolutely, when they criticize reincarnation, they are shooting at their own foot. That's the problem. So without understanding, they are talking. Their own scripture says that something survives death. Otherwise, what is salvation? What is the definition of salvation? Salvation means at the day of judgment, you will be put permanently into heaven. And those other people will be permanently goes to hell. This is the whole idea. I'm not judging or correcting or anything like that. I'm just presenting the facts. But here in Vedanta, it tells that the surviving entity or the subtle body of a human being or any living being for that matter, at the time of the death of the physical body, it transmigrates to a different body. What exactly determines the direction of that transmigration? What exactly determines the type of new body you are getting? What determines the place you are born? What determines the time you are born? What determines the type of inclinations or the pre-programming you are going to have? That is determined not by a all-powered mighty God, but by the karma. Law of karma determines that. That is a big difference, right? It's not that one fine morning God says, let him be born as rich person. Let him be born without eyes. Let him be born without legs. What fairness in this whole system is there if you believe that theory? So it is the law of karma. The accumulated karmas from the birth after the birth is going to determine the type of birth I'm going to get, the place of birth I'm going to get, the environments I'm going to get, the natural inclination I'm going to get. So the subtle body transmigrates. The best example is when you change your phone. You bring a new iPhone near the old iPhone, what happened? Everything, the whole personality of the old iPhone get transmigrated to the new phone. This is a classic example of reincarnation. And what exactly is transmigrating there? Oh, you see that, okay, my playlist is exactly the same. So here there was no alteration, but in the law of karma, there will be some alteration depending upon the sanchita karma I get. That's a different point. But what I'm trying to say is that your personality get transmigrated to a different body. And why I leave this body, only God knows. The prarabdha is over, the body is over. That's it. So there is no point in saying that one person died at this age, another person lived up to 120. And some people even look at if the karma is not there, even if you get into the biggest accident, you will not die. Look at the plane crash in Ahmedabad. How the person got survived, one survivor. Isn't it a miracle? This is the law of karma. If the karma is not ended, if the prarabdha is not ended, even if anything can happen, somehow that person will survive. That is the idea. So let's come back to the topic. This is such an important topic. So the longevity, if you compare subtle body as a larger dimension. But just like the physical body undergoes changes, the subtle body also undergoes changes depending upon the type of it's like the software. Imagine your iPhone 5 years back. You may not have had Spotify there, or you may not have, you might be using an old type of MP3 stored music player. Now everybody uses app. So what happened? As time changes, I may install new app. Some of the old app I will uninstall. So the type of personality evolves, the software evolves. Just like that, the subtle body evolves as time goes by. And this is called punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Punarapi janani jatare shayanam. So this is the cycle of samsara. You get a birth, then you die, you take another birth. This cycle continues. You can evolve up, you can evolve down, depending upon your own actions. So this is the difference between physical body and subtle body. Any questions? Avanti, you want to cover the subtle body from your perspective?
Namaskar. First of all, chanting for the really gratitude for the chanting. I think it's mesmerizing. Every time he plays it, Rajeshji plays it in the beginning. I think it's available on Spotify, right, Rajeshji? Please download it if you haven't already. It's there's a lot of chanting out there, but this is so meditative. It just puts you directly in contact with the Gita. It's a meaningful pause. I mean, I've been shedding a lot of tears in spite of having all of this knowledge for the whole of last week. It's a meaningful pause that we had to pause at this point in the Gita. And then that horrific tragedy that is so mindless, that is so senseless, happened with the Air India flight. And why it's affected me so much is because throughout, since that class to this point, all my classes have paused on that crash. Not able to make sense of it at all. People are just not able to make sense of it at all. And the funny thing is that these crashes, these accidents, tsunamis, earthquakes have happened throughout time. Why is it that this particular crash is really putting mankind to that table to really think? I don't know why. I mean, yes, people say social media is so active, so it's right there in your face day in and day out. The algorithm keeps putting that out. But no, there is something that humanity is actually thinking about these things. And you can see it worldwide. I mean, some of the channels that I've been following, there are so many Western, even aviation people and all are getting into the esoteric stuff. And we are lucky to be already studying the subject. So one interesting thing, 2-3 things that I would like to bring up is, I don't know whether you all saw that, but there was a Bhagavad Gita that was found at the site. And I fact checked it, and it is true that, a lot of things just come up and they say all rubbish. But I fact checked it, and it is true that in that complete rubble where there was nothing but ash of bodies, the Bhagavad Gita, bit charred on the sides, was found. And then a lot of people were asking, what's the point? What's the point if the person reading the Bhagavad Gita was killed and the Bhagavad Gita survived? But I think it was a very strong message to reiterate to those who understand the Bhagavad Gita, these very shlokas that we are covering right now, is that people will, exactly what Rajeshji has been saying, people will come and go, you and I will come and go, and we have come and gone, like the last 2 shlokas, especially Shloka 12 said that it's never been that we have never been, and it will never be that we are never there. But this transition from one body to another is inescapable. One thing that we were discussing a lot while writing this book is whether to get the Karana Sharira into the explanation of these shlokas, which I'm sure Rajesh will touch in this class or the classes that follow. But I think that is something that we need to rest on, especially in this particular at this particular point of the Bhagavad Gita, since we have spoken about something keeps moving on. So when something keeps moving on, that what we've talked about, the subtle body keeps moving from one body to another body, why is it moving on? Why does it have to move on? And then that brings me back to that BMI chart that we discussed 2 weeks ago. It's a very simple, see, for us, yes, we need all the Shastric, Vedantic terminologies, and we need all of this. But we need to, for our day-to-day life, we have to understand very properly what is in our control and what's not. So what is making us keep on taking birth again and again and again is, in that BMI chart, the vasanas that are standing between Atma and the body, mind, intellect. So when you look at the chart, there's Atma on top, Om, then there's vasanas, there's body, mind, intellect. So the vasanas that is like what he just mentioned, the impressions, the personality traits, the characteristics, that until it is completely exhausted, which holds all our karma, which holds all our tendency, which holds all our unidentified desires, all of that, which he also said, Sanchita, until that entire thing is exhausted, we will keep coming back and back and back and back. Now let's leave that Karana Sharira. Let's deal with what's happening over here. Right now, we've come with one particular portion of that whole Sanchita, karma, vasana, all of it, to exhaust, to transcend, to experience, whatever it is that you want to say, you want to do with it. You've come with a bag of those into the world and you're ready to experience that. When that bag is empty, as soon as that bag is empty of the prarabdha, you pass away. You could be walking on a street, you could be sleeping, you could be in an accident, you could be suffering a terminal disease. All those things are just nimitta matrams. They are just ways of how you will pass away. But that you will pass away then, except for suicide, which I'm sure will come up in one of our classes, all those things are, when it's over, it will go. And nobody except your own subtle body. It comes in verse number 22, that only the embodied knows when to drop this and when to leave. Now, when you bring this crash inside the picture of this whole thing, this is where people conflict. They're like, what nonsense. We're listening to all the stories. One entire family was going to start their new life in London. Another man had come to put his wife's asthis in the Ganga, in the Narmada, and he's, passed away. What sense? Of course, their prarabdha couldn't have been over. You're mixing up prarabdha with agam. While we are living our prarabdha, it is natural. While we are living out what we've come to exhaust, it is natural to take on more and more and more and more desires. But there's no contract given to you that whatever you feel like doing in this world, you will stay alive till you finish that. When your prarabdha, which only your embodied soul, the sukshma sharira knows that, yes, I'm done with what I had to do in this particular lifetime, will I move on? So in all those 241 people who passed away, it is important, it behooves us to rest assured that their prarabdha was done. No matter if they were 2 years old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 80-year-old, no matter if they were the chief minister of some place, their prarabdha for this life, this is not something I am saying, this is something that the Bhagavad Gita has unequivocally declared, which you should not at this point argue with. We've spoken about the 4 ways of how we gain knowledge. One is pratyaksha. I have experience, so I can say this is true. The other is anumana. You make an estimation that, oh, okay, there is a smoke, so there must be a fire somewhere. The third is you make a comparison. Somebody doesn't know who Shivaji was. Shivaji was as ferocious as a tiger. Was he actually a tiger? No, it was just to understand what Shivaji Maharaj's might was. But the fourth one, which we have to rest on as Vedantic students, and especially as the students of the Bhagavad Gita, is what we have heard. What our teachers, our perceptors, our preceptors have told us, what the Bhagavad Gita is telling us. So the Bhagavad Gita says that, and that is why Krishna is so restricted. He says, stop grieving. It is silly to grieve. You should not grieve, because this is the fact that when your prarabdha is over, you will pass away. In that same light, as Rajesh brought up the guy who survived, rest assured that prarabdha was not over. It just wasn't over. He still has to live something on. Now, some people say, okay, then why did he have to, if he had to survive only, why did he even meet this crash? See, these things we have to understand when we are living our life. Why did he why was he part of that horrific crash, which is going to haunt him forever? It's going to change his personality forever. So here I would like to bring up 2 things. One, a reminder of what Shankaracharya tells us again and again and again and again, This human birth is the most precious birth to reach that goal of all the beings in the world, which is self-realization. Do not waste it. That is what Shankaracharya says. On the other hand, I first used to believe it, but now I am convinced that life itself is our biggest cheerleader, leading us to that goal, constantly leading us to that goal. What we take as biggest mishaps in our life are meant to detour us, bring us back from that detour that we've taken towards that goal. And here I'd like to bring up Chaturbhuja Vishnu, the four-handed Vishnu. So if you look at some of the paintings, Vishnu has four hands. In one hand, he's holding the lotus. In the other hand, he's holding a conch. In the third hand, he's holding a gada. And in the fourth hand, he's holding a mace. Okay? Remember what we're talking about? The guy who survived. Okay? The lotus represents what Shankaracharya says, our ultimate goal in life, which is self-realization. Every human birth, doesn't matter what karmas we've come up with. We have seen Raja Kaushik turn into Vishwamitra. We have seen a dacoit turn into Valmiki in one lifetime. So it doesn't matter what karma you've come up with. And we don't have to become Vishwamitras and we don't have to become Valmikis, but yes, we have to get closer to that thing. It connects very deeply with this particular shloka. We have to come closer to that self-realization goal. That much better. Like Rajesh ji said, the apps are better. In your next life, the apps are better. So that is the lotus. This is what you are. Come to this realization. And that is why we are here. Yes, we have to exhaust our vasanas, but in a way that we are coming closer to this realization. So that lotus is in one hand. The next hand, he has a conch. So the conch is those chota mota things that happen in our life, those jhatkas that we get, that something happens and we are reminded of God. Remember the 4 types of devotees that we've mentioned in many classes that come to God. One comes in grief. So that grief that we hit, that knock that we get to remind us, come back to the lotus. Some people change there. One small incident in their life is enough to make them spiritual, not to save them from the incident, but to follow it through to the end. You don't listen there, you get a gada, a bigger shock. Some people change there. Some don't. You don't change over there, then it is annihilation. What is annihilation? Don't confuse it with you die in this life. You have not come closer. You have lost that opportunity of this life. You have to start all over again with the same nonsense, again and again. So putting it back to this particular person who survived, this well could be his gada. And we have seen people who come through these accidents, who come through terminal illnesses, they are complete changed personalities. It is what they need to, improve that app, upgrade that app, change that phone. And their whole life becomes, we've seen even people like on very high heights of material, prowess and stuff, who they've lost their wives to some deadly disease. They've started institutions. Their whole life goal changes. And you'll be interested to see that those life goals align with coming to the truth of what really is life. So coming back to this particular shloka that was in discussion, 13, when you just look at the translation of it, as we put it in the book, let me just find it exactly as it is in the book, 13. Okay, just as the embodied self experiences transitions from childhood to youth, and then to old age, jara, within the body, in the same way, it attains another body after death. Okay. Now, yes, it is an analogy that something in us persists. And while it might be talking about the Atma, the witnessing consciousness that sees us going through, childhood, youth, and old age, I'd like to highlight another insight. Okay. This that we're talking about, childhood, youth, and old age, also talks about the evolutionary journey of ourself. We start off life completely not, familiar with the spiritual path at all. We haven't even taken birth in the spiritual path. And then we get introduced. We are children in spirituality, just new. The idea is when we pass away, we should be 1 degree over. So now, if we are children in this life, in spirituality, in our spiritual understanding, in our spiritual evolution, next life, we should be youth. After that, the next life, we should be adults. After that, in spirituality. After that, next life, we should be old. And eventually, what Rajeshji was talking about, even the subtle body has a death. Eventually, that subtle body, that inner temperament should reach that ripe old age where you have completely mastered spirituality and that subtle body dies. So we have to keep making sure that we are growing. When he said every life we are either evolving or devolving, make sure you are continuously growing. You leave this life better than what you have started off. Krishna says it's once in a lifetime that somebody, once in many lifetimes, bahunama janmana. In so many lifetimes, after so many lifetimes, you attain self-realization. That shouldn't put us off. Our plan and our agenda and our itinerary for this journey, for this odyssey that we are on, is that every single lifetime leaves us better and closer to that final goal of self-realization. So it's a good point, even with the shloka, to understand where am I in my spiritual understanding. Am I a child? If I am a child, I should ensure that I have to become a youth in this lifetime, because ultimately I have to get to that ripe old age where even the subtle body passes away, is no longer, and you are fully merged. And one last thing I'd like to say is that please understand, we've tried to clarify this in the book a lot, and Rajeshji keeps bringing up, there's a very distinct difference. What the Bhagavad Gita or any Upanishads or Advaita Vedanta says ultimately is Tattvam Asi, that you are. When it says that you are, Tattvam Asi, it's talking about Atma, that nothingness, as Sanjay Rajput ji called it once, or everything. So you are that Atma, okay? But what we keep saying keeps moving, which has that relative longevity, is the soul, like he mentioned, the Karana Sharira and the subtle body. So this distinction, please understand very, very nicely. Even the subtle body and the Karana Sharira come under what is Asat. It is relatively Sat for a long time till we wake up from the dream, but it is Asat. So this is what keeps hopping from one body to another, to another, to another. That belongs to the realm of not real. The only reality, what the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishad says, is you are Atma. Till you realize you are an Atma, you will be this relative reality which keeps on going forward with each lifetime. I hope that helps.
Right. So now I think we are 9:15, but just a preview. We saw what is physical body, what is subtle body, and what happens when the physical body dies. Something transmigrates, and what transmigrates is subtle body. Now the bigger question, who am I? Yes, physical body, I have physical body. Am I the physical body? Yes, physical body gives me some personality. That's not the complete dimension of myself. Am I the subtle body? Yes, subtle body gives me a little bit more personality or other dimension, but that's not me. What exactly is me? That is the third component or third dimension or the real me. That is known as Atma or the consciousness, which we need to discuss next week and move on, because the next 12 shlokas are going to talk about predominantly about the Atma, and then on top of that, how the physical body and the subtle body are impacted. But couple of previews. In that same example we have seen, the computer hardware, software. But let's say that even if you have the best supercomputer in the world, then you have the best supercomputer, right? So the latest supercomputer they have released. I just forgot the name, but like if every human being, right, in their in the planet do some task, like whatever they can do in 12 years plus, the supercomputer can do in 1 minute. But it is that kind of powerful it is. Even if you have it, even if you have the best software on top of that, the most stable OS, the best AI software in it, everything, let's have it. But it will not function without another X factor, which is the electricity. So just like that, there is a physical body, there is a subtle body. Both physical body and the subtle body are inert and insentient. And you need an X factor, which is the ultimate dimension of your personality. And that is what is known as Atma. What is the word meaning of Atma? It is me. That's it. Self. Myself. So it's not a complicated word. We think that is a very technical word or something like that. The simple word meaning of Atma is just me. So Vedanta tells that while you have the physical dimension, subtle dimension, but the true you is the Atma. The true yourself is Atma. Okay. Atma is the true self of mine. Now, let me just throw something out and we will try to answer next week. There are. Oh my God. If you're
Rituji,
not
can you
speaking,
please mute your Rajeshi? Can you mute your? Thank you.
okay, great. So now the question is, how many Atmas are there? Let's say that 8 billion people are in the planet. Then you have billions of other living beings. So billions of physical, or in fact, trillions of physical body, trillions of subtle body. How many Atma? Here is the bombshell of Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta tells there is only one Atma. I know this is very hard to believe and complicated, but that is the fact. So this is what we are going to deep dive next week. One more point. At the time of your birth, what is born is neither the subtle body nor the Atma. It is the physical body. What, like begetting old age, meaning youth, old age, etc., is physical body. What at the time of death, who is dying away? It is the physical body. At the time of death, what is going to happen to the physical body? It will disintegrate. If you burn or if you bury, whatever it will disintegrate it into nature. What happens to subtle body? The subtle body was there before the birth. The subtle body was always before the iPhone 15. My iPhone personality was there. My profile was there before that. What exactly happened when I brought the new iPhone 15? The profile I had on 14 was transmigrated. So the birth of a new body is not the birth of the subtle body. The subtle body was there in the past and the subtle body will be there. But is that subtle body is going to exist forever? No. The subtle body has a beginning. Subtle body has an end. So we are going to talk about that particular dimension. I'm going outside the book right now because the book we are not covering this detail, but this is a very serious students and we are all studying Vedanta very seriously. So we need to understand this. So what happens to the subtle body when the subtle body gets born? When the subtle body, what is going to happen? And what is the difference between subtle body and the causal body? It is causal body, not casual body. So what happened was some Vedanta teacher once made a mistake. It was a typo, and people started calling it as casual body, casual body, casual. So that's a joke. So causal body, and what is that oneness of the Atma? Because ekam eva advyatiyam, one and non-dually one, and because of that one Atma, which is there for the entire universe. That is why this whole Vedanta is known as Advaita Vedanta. We are going to shed some lights on those things. I know that this shloka, we are going to take 3 classes almost, but it is worth. But let me pause here, stop the recording. So, and as anybody has any questions or comments to share, this is very subtle, deep topic of Vedanta. And I have one more question.